Disclaimer. I want to say at the beginning of this video that I am in no way, shape, or form invoking illegal practices. I just want to talk about a subject that I think is interesting and that has an interesting discourse over it in recent news. So with that, let's get into the video. Hi, my name is WB, and today I want to talk about somewhat of a touchy subject in the gaming industry that's been on the rise of discussion. And no, I'm not talking about how big reclaimed video game publishers shouldn't be buying up smaller companies than to just make them as liquidated assets because of poor financial decisions. And today we won't be pointing any fingers, but I think we know who I'm talking about. Embracer Group! But I want to talk about a topic that has a bigger split down the middle than when we had the console wars back in the 90s and 2010s. But comment down below who you rep. If you know anything about me, I'm an Xbox boy until I die, but I digress. Now, what I want to actually talk about today for the topic is emulation. If you're like me, a couple of years ago, you may have heard of the rise of different emulation handhelds or companies that make free services to make emulation common and easy, just to do with a couple of ROMs and files and be able to play any retro or AAA game titles on the go. Now, that may sound weird if you're new to the gaming scene. If you probably still don't know what I'm talking about, let's go before diving in. Let's actually have a video game high school, so to speak, lesson on what the definition of emulation is, which is a piece of hardware or software that emulates or imitates a video game console, which is not on its proprietary hardware. So in layman's terms, what does this mean? But in all seriousness, emulation opens up a lot of avenues for old retro games and their cult classics, as well as some hidden gems that have come through the years to be enjoyed in a very easy and accessible way. So you may be asking yourself, why is this such a touchy subject? See, when talking about emulation, there always seems to be a divide between the gaming community and that of the developers and the gaming companies, which is totally understandable. I mean, who doesn't love not paying for awesome games, right? I mean, I bet the most of us remember watching a VHS or DVD and seeing the ad that says, "You wouldn't steal a car, so why would you pirate movies?" Also, sidebar, can we talk about how dark that ad was? Honestly, like, I get what you were trying to get your point across, but I highly doubt the 6-year-old WB that is trying to watch the Jimmy Timmy Power Hour isn't going to figure out how to illegally download the movie off of this orange Nickelodeon VHS, right? Now I'm wondering, was it an orange VHS? It has to be, right? It was Nickelodeon. Anyway, that's not the point. Piracy was taught to us at a very young age that it should be looked at as a negative thing, which I 99% agree with. Like, hey, stealing is bad from developers and creators, and they should be getting paid for their creations fairly, and there's no doubt about that. But with that 1%, I do have to ask the question of what happens when I'm unable to access the downloads that I have already digitally bought because these companies take down the access point for me to have the ability to re-download these purchases that I have already made. Am I just crap out of luck at that point? And I think the answer to this question is a lot of gaming companies would say yeah. See, if you watch my previous video about my retrospective of the Battlefield Bad Company games, in that video I talk a lot about how there needs to be a better way of preserving video games for generations to come, so that they are not lost, and so that the experiences that we have with these games, we can learn from them, and then implement the knowledge and the background for these games to later generational games. But with all of these digital game stores such as the eShop for the Wii U and 3DS, and soon, close to at the beginning of the year of January 2024, the Xbox 360 marketplace going down, there are going to be even more games that will have an inaccessibility because of these shops being shut down. See, the reason I'm having this discussion is to somewhat possibly try to steer the conversation of emulation into a more positive light in the industry rather than having it with all of its negative connotations. I'm not advising people to steal developer games that can still be bought somewhere on a digital platform. If you do this and you are that person, you should feel ashamed and you are the problem for giving emulation a bad name. But I'm pleading with these companies to stop taking down emulation websites and gaming software that is allowing us to play these older games that aren't even available within reason. And what I mean by that is that most of these titles from older generations haven't been ported over to the PC or wherever the latest console is. Somewhere you're usually paying basically the price of a new gaming console or just new video games, which is ridiculous, especially for an old video game that none of these resellers are sending any of the profits to the actual publishing companies. And then you get into the situation of a catch-22. See, the reason why I'm such an advocate for emulation is because not only do you get to reconnect with generations of games that maybe you didn't get to grow up with because of age or when it came out, or maybe it's just like how it is today where it's hella expensive to play any video game, or for whatever reason that is. Emulation makes it more accessible for gaming, especially for titles that we will never see the light of day again. Each time a digital store goes down, we lose a good amount of video games that will never be able to be played unless either we had a physical copy of it or a digitally stored copy somewhere. And at some point, that digital copy will malfunction. But not only does emulation help with legacy of gaming, it also helps with the actual sales of games, even though that companies may not think so. And to give a perfect example of this is my own personal experience with Metroid Prime. Because before it was announced in February of 2023 that we were going to be getting a remastered on the Switch, I had watched another YouTuber play Metroid Prime Hack in Dolphin on his video called Why Metroid Prime Hack is Still Awesome in 2022. By the way, links in the description below for BBKDragoonz video, and please go check it out if you haven't already. But for me personally, I wasn't able to play this emulation port of it. I have no way of playing it really. But watching Dragoon's video got me excited about not only playing Metroid Prime for the first time, but also with modern controls and updated graphics. And when the news released in February 2023 about how the Switch would be getting a remastered port of it, it made me want to go out and actually spend my money on the actually fully licensed remastered copy, which, by the way, I have been playing and it's been living up to the hype for me. But now I can see where companies may think that emulation takes away sales, which is true to some extent when talking at least in the subject of a viable defense for people emulating newly released games, such as in the case of Tears of the Kingdom that happened late last year, which was a misuse of how emulation should be used. But when an IP is dormant and not being sold from a publisher in any modern platform, I think publishers such as Nintendo should look at emulation as a free marketing asset and use it to their advantage rather than looking at it as something negative towards not only sales of their own video games, but use it as a gauger for what may work or have an audience for a remaster. In conclusion, the gaming community as well as the industry shouldn't be looking at emulation as the demise of how our culture is in gaming, but we should look at it as a way of saving the actual industry, because at the end of the day, emulation should be looked at as something that doesn't negatively impact the culture as well as something that takes away from our publishers when used correctly, and that it can be used to benefit not only the publisher in making a quick and easy money grab for getting a return and giving the publishers a stability in their business model, but as well keeping your consumer happy, or like how GameStop always says, power to the player. But with that, thank you so much for watching this video, essay, rant, whatever you want to call it. If you enjoyed this, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. And if you want, you can follow me on all of my socials at Walking Bobcat, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.